Greetings ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's Reddit series video from the subreddit HFY called Clint Stone Chapter 10 Children, written by some guy named Ted. The link to the original will be down below, and as always, I hope that you enjoy. There is one thing, and one thing you never ever do around Clint Stone, or anywhere within 100,000 light years of him, if you wish to remain a living, breathing organism with all your limbs attached. He will, if given enough time, forgive and forget most grievances. If you strike him, cheat him, or kill one of his friends, blow up a ship, there is potential that you will escape unscathed. Unlikely, but it is possible. But never, ever harm a child where Clint can hear about it. He will hunt you down, and he will make you pay. He will not stop, he will not forget. If you harm a child, you will pay for it with the blood and tears and pain. So much pain that you will wish that your ancestors had never been born. If you kill a child, no force in the universe can stop Clint Stone from hunting you down and removing your skin from the inside. The Thieves Guild on Baruna learned that one the hard way. This was about 4 months after the station fire, and Clint was on Baruna to find out some information about the Swarm Empire. We never did find it, but Clint did find something. "What are we doing here again?" I asked Clint. We had been walking around the poor excuse of a town for several hours. Clint seemed to just wander from shop to shop front, looking at everything, buying nothing. We had come to far reaches of civilization on advice of some shady character on Queer. What that advice was, I don't know. "I'm looking for someone," Clint responded. "They were supposed to be here hours ago." "Well, they're probably not going to show." "Hey!" I shouted when I felt a hand enter my pocket and pull up my mark stick. The thief ran off into the ground, disappearing with a large mass of people. Clint dove after him, his large frame pushing the crowd aside. A surprised screech sounded, and I knew that Clint had caught the little pickpocket. I hurried over and expected to get my money back. What I did not expect was the thief that held onto Clint's big hand was a boy, hanging upside down by his ankle. The boy was fighting to get loose, but fading spectacularly. No more than perhaps 10 years old, the rubbery-skinned Jazul boy was dressed in rags and shoeless. A necklace hung over his neck and kept in place by 3 small tentacles wriggling under the boy's chin. A stone with a strange carving was on the trinket. "Well, what are we going to do with him?" I asked just after I got past my shock. "We can't let him go. We'll have to give him over to the authorities." "We can't do that," Clint argued. "They'll just punish him and throw him back on the streets. We need to do is find—" "Please let me go, please," the boy begged. "They'll be angry if I don't come back." "Who will be angry?" asked Clint in a soft voice that I'd never heard before. "Your parents?" "No. The guild. They—" The boy was cut off abruptly, as if he realized he'd said too much. Clint looked at him, smiled, and then put him back down on the ground, keeping a tight grip on the boy's shoulder. There was only one guild around here that would use children. The Thieves Guild. They were notorious for kidnapping children and using them as cheap labor. I told this to Clint. His eyes widened and then narrowed. "Thieves do this. They leave the kids here to starve, but expect them to steal for them." Clint growled. His voice softened, and then he turned to the boy. "Is that why you stole from Teddy Bear here?" The boy giggled and Clint chuckled. I grabbed Clint by the arm and whispered, "I am not a teddy bear. My name is TEDx." "Of course it is, Teddy Bear," he snorted. The boy giggled again, and I saw why Clint had done that. The boy was relaxed, and he seemed happy. The boy smiled, and it looked strange on his face. It did not look like his face that smiled much, despite belonging to a child who should have been nothing but smiles. The thought made me sad. "Perhaps you want something to eat?" Clint asked the little boy. He nodded. "Good. I know a place with the best Dessous melon on the planet. Do you want some?" The boy nodded again. "Then let's go get some." Clint picked up the boy and put him on his shoulder. The boy looked like a little doll up there. "What's your name?" I asked the kid. "Regan," the response came. "Where are your parents?" I asked. The boy shook his head and hunched against Clint, who patted his leg. You don't have to tell the teddy bear, Clint reassured Regan with an oddly soft voice of his. He's a little scary, isn't he? The boy nodded and I snorted. The boy thought I was scary. He was sitting on the shoulder of the scariest being in the galaxy, the one who made monsters run at the sound of his name. We walked down the street, making quite a sight, I'm sure. The tallest being anyone on this planet had ever seen, a furry Jahan who wasn't in chains or running from the watch, and a little bright boy sitting on a tall pink one's shoulder. And talked to Raccoon as the whole time we walked with a soft voice, talking about nothing, but still, somehow he managed to get some information out of the boy. It was impressive how much Clint was able to get out of him without actually asking about what he wanted to know. The boy was from a poor section of town. His parents were dead. He lived in the street, but the Thieves' Guild found him and forced him to work for them. They beat him until he agreed to help them. Clint's face grew dark when Raccoon said that, but it changed right back to a happy and light when the boy looked at him. Raccoon told us of his life in the guild and how they were mean and they beat him up for the slightest infractions. He told us of his friend Frass, who hadn't seen for a long time. He'd gotten his necklace from Frass, who said that it meant friendship and family. Mostly he told us the stories he'd heard from the other thief children. Stories about faraway planets and wondrous cities. He was going to be an explorer when he grew up, and he was going to discover new worlds and interesting species. He seemed almost giddy at the thought of leaving Baruna, and I'm sure Clint was thinking of taking him with us. We got to the restaurant and Clint got Raccoon a big juicy slice of Dessous melon. The boy tore into it like he hadn't eaten for a week, which was a depressing possibility. Slow down, you'll choke, said Clint. Eat it slow and you can taste the sweet better. There you go. That's the way to do it. This was a side of Clint that I'd never seen before. He was gentle, he was considerate, and he was, well, likable. I had no problem with him, but I had been with him since the beginning. Everyone else he met took a disliking to him after a while. In fact, Clint was so different around this little orphan boy, he seemed like a completely different person. I wondered if Clint had been a father. I thought about asking him, but decided against it. He always refused to talk about anything from his past. Do you think we could take him with us? Clint whispered to me while Raccoon was busy devouring the melon. We have enough room on the Susan. There it was. I knew Clint was going to ask that. There was no way that we were going to be able to take care of a kid. Not on the trail of destruction that Clint left in his wake. I started. Good, it's settled, Clint interrupted me. He turned to Raccoon and said, What do you think about coming with us? We're explorers, you know. We can take you away from here, into the stars. The boy's eyes widened. He nodded violently, as he couldn't talk with a mouthful of melon. He hurriedly swallowed. Yes, take me with you. Get me out of here, he said excitedly. The Clint smiled with joy. He looked so full with happiness. I knew right there that Clint was indeed being a father. I had never seen Clint look so happy. His happiness was reflected in Raccoon's face. Was I the only one who was thinking logically here? We couldn't bring... The look of happiness disappeared from Raccoon's eyes so fast that it could have outrun the Susan. It was replaced with a wide-eyed look of horror. Eyes focused on the point just over Clint's shoulders. Raccoon slumped low in his chair, trying to hide. Clint was too busy being happy to notice when I did, and I twisted in my chair to see who Raccoon was terrified of. There, at the door, stood a tall being dressed in all black, despite the heat. A member of the Thieves' Guild here to take Raccoon. As I watched in horror, the figure lifted a plasma pistol and fired a shot. I tried to block it with my body, but the chair was awkward and it slowed me down. The shot passed my ear, nicking it, and continued into Raccoon's chest. The boy fell back, tumbling into the ground. Clint roared with surprise and rage. He spun, knife flicking from his hand. He whipped his hand forward, and the knife shot towards the dark figure. It raised its arm to block the knife, buried itself into the hilt into the creature's forearm. Clint made to run after the assassin, but a cry from Raccoon stopped him. Clint collapsed next to the boy and gathered him in his arms. He ripped open the boy's shirt and placed his hands over the wound, applying pressure to stop the bleeding. But even I could see that there was nothing that Clint could have done. The boy was dying. You're going to be all right. We'll walk out of here and we'll go fly amongst the stars." Clint lied to the boy, his voice soft and gentle, soothing. His face had lines of tears cutting through the hard lines of his face, softening them. Raccoon smiled. "I've always wanted to see the stars," he whispered. "I hope that—" His voice got off, and I knew that he was gone. Clint's body sagged, and he wept, his shoulders heaving. I didn't know what to do or say. I left Clint to his grief. When his tears stopped, Clint brushed his hands across Raccoon's face, closing his eyes. He reached down to Raccoon's chest and lifted the friendship necklace from it. Clint stood, his fist clenched around the necklace. Clint was calm, the calmest that I'd ever seen him. It was the calm before the storm, the biggest storm this planet had ever seen. "We have work to do," Clint said, his voice steady. He looked at me. His eyes, oh God, his eyes were indescribable. The deep cold on the furthest reaches of the abyss and the fiery rage of 1,000 blazing suns mixed in his eyes, and I knew that nothing would stop the storm from retribution that was about to befall the Thieves' Guild. I almost pitied them. They had unleashed a horror beyond their darkest nightmares, and they would pay. They had stolen something precious from Clint Stone, and he was coming for them. End of chapter.